Hey, welcome back. This is Code 3, Sector 3. My name is Larry Velasquez. This is our second episode. We've got a pretty awesome guest coming to you today. Um, I'm into the sponsorships and partnerships aspect of business in general, but motorsports specifically. And this gentleman has made a bit of a name for himself in that realm, and I'd like to bring his knowledge onto the show, give my audience a little bit bigger and better understanding of what he does, what I'm trying to do, and what to expect as we continue the show. Well, welcome back. We are here with David Christie, founder of Camber. And before I butcher anything else about it, I'll just let you take over. Can you give a little brief rundown of what you do?
Larry, you don't need to worry about butchering anything. I'm Scottish, so we naturally butcher everything we talk about. But thanks for having me on. My name is David Christie. I founded Camber back in 2016. I now work with racing drivers directly, trying to educate them on how to brand themselves better, work with sponsors, partners, and pretty much make better relationships all year round. I am a complete motorsport nerd. I watch it as much as I possibly can. Used to work at my national circuit here in Scotland at Knockhill. Was very lucky to have a full-time job there for a couple of years, and then went self-employed in 2019. And it was the scariest thing that I've ever done in my life, and I've never ever looked back.
That is amazing. It's a story I hope to emulate myself, one step at a time. Is there anything that I know we talked a little bit briefly before, but is there anything that your agency, your company, sorry, does or tries to fill in gaps wise for motorsports?
Yeah, so it basically kind of matches my own journey through motorsport when I went self-employed. When I started, I wanted to do everything for drivers. I wanted to basically help them get sponsorship because that's the biggest thing that we hear all the time from drivers, right? We're either I can't do the season ahead because I haven't got the funding, or I'm looking to get more businesses and brands on boards. Um, put your logo on my car. That's all I ever heard. And I thought, yeah, I could help out with that. So when I started, I was doing videos, I was doing sponsorship brochures, websites, sorting them out with emails, all everything in between. And I very quickly realized that there was a more fundamental problem. There was a very deep rooted educational problem in terms of understanding how to actually speak to sponsors, how to actually secure a sponsorship and work with brands and partnerships. And ever since then, it became more frustrating. I took a couple of years off, did some other things, and gave me a completely new perspective on the motorsport industry. And I felt inspired last year to jump back in, take the reins again, and work more in like an educational sense in terms of working directly with drivers and try and show them the way. And I've fully accepted it's going to be a long haul. We're in this for years, decades to come, but I think we'll slowly get there and we'll slowly show the difference that we can make by getting drivers to build those better relationships.
Awesome. I hope you're here that long. I would love to be involved as well with that. But over the time you've been involved, and I guess going forward, how has it evolved, and how do you think it will continue to evolve the sponsorship game or just motorsports in general?
That's a brilliant question, Larry. The simple fact and the unfortunate fact is I don't feel that drivers have evolved as much as they should. If we look at drivers compared to, say, social media influencers who are able to present themselves and promote themselves to brands and get themselves in a very professional light in a very quick way, they're able to move and evolve and adapt very quickly indeed. But yet, as drivers, we're still stuck like 15, 20 years ago, where we're asking for asking for businesses and brands to come and put their logo on our car because they'll get TV exposure. And that's just not the case. That's not been the case for 15 years now. Um, Instead of drivers looking to tell their story, instead of drivers looking to focus and double down on who they are as a person and build the fans that are out there waiting to kind of support them on and cheer them on, we are lost because we're all essentially just making this up as we go along. And the advice that we've been given for the past sort of 10, 15, 20 years, I think no longer fits in this industry. Maybe it never fitted for the likes of grassroots club level national motorsports. But there's just so many things that we need to change as an industry, and I would have liked to have seen change over the past 10 years, but we have to take it step by step, unfortunately.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I've seen a little bit, like I said, I've just started in the grassroots myself. So I have seen there are some local stars who tend to get all of the sponsorships, at least here in Utah. But that's again, it's small, and it's from my experience, it's not just because they're good, because one of them that I can think of doesn't win every race, but he's consistent. He shows up, and the biggest thing I've seen is I've seen his partners at every race. He does more than put a logo on a car, and that's something that I've tried to speak on a little bit. So I'm hoping that, like I said, I'm hoping I can come into this sphere, expand it with what I have, and continue to move progress forward for drivers, for grassroots sports, and hopefully some local tracks. Like I said, I've got one here that's trying to get up, so I'm hoping to help them as well. But going back to the drivers, and you've touched on it a little bit, but can you just a little bit more? Can you explain the difference between a driver's personal brand, so to speak, versus here's a here's a logo on a car?
Yeah, and that's such an important difference to make here. Personal brands are massively important when it comes to getting sponsorship and partners on board, because that's what people support. We think that we all want to have that multi-million-dollar deal from a huge multinational corporation, and suddenly, you know, seasons and seasons of whatever championship we dream of taking part in are secure and we don't need to worry about it. But the realistic prospect of that is the fact that behind those companies is a person making that decision. And that person has to know you, that person has to like you, and that person has to trust you. And that's where a personal brand comes in. The personal brand, just like any brand, is how you represent yourself consistently. It's how you get yourself across to people that you've either just met or that already know you. It's an at a glance guide essentially to who you are. So it's what you stand for, what you believe in, and what you represent, all nicely packaged up in one bundle. And everybody can and should have a personal brand as a racing driver. It's so crucial to actually getting any sort of partnership or sponsorship. And one thing that I did want to actually just very quickly touch on is something that I think is massively overlooked. And for a lot of drivers, the key question is this: if you can afford to if you can afford to fund your own racing career, and you don't financially need to get sponsors on board, and you don't want them, you don't take them. You don't need to. A lot of people and a lot of drivers associate like somehow sponsorship, the more sponsors they have, as the more successful they have. And the two are not aligned in any way. Just like you were saying there earlier about it's not necessarily kids or drivers that are talented that are getting the sponsors. If sponsorship had anything to do with talent and performance on track, then the back teams of any championship would receive no funding whatsoever. And you look at the likes in F1 of Kick or of Haas, they still have sponsors. They still, and yet they're consistently towards the middle half or back half of the field. Yet they still have sponsors, not just on the car, but actually helping them out behind the scenes as well. So it's so many different aspects, but just rounding it off back to the personal brand, it's the easiest way for you to get an idea of who you are. And you have to stick to that. You have to be authentic with that personal brand. The personal brand also gives you an out. Especially in this day and age of Instagram and TikTok and people oversharing every single aspect of their lives, the personal brand gives you as a racing driver that line, that red line of what you feel comfortable sharing, of where do you draw the line of like, do you not want your family to be seen, or do you not want your kids to be part of your personal brand, or your wife or your husband or your partner, whatever, wherever that line is, that's where it can be. And you can share as much as you want to, but you also don't have to share any more than you need to as well. So personal brand is your starter for 10 as a racing driver. It's the easiest way to start building that audience and building your supporters.
Do you have, if you can, an example or a story of a again sticking kind of the grassroots level of a smaller team or a smaller driver making this strategy work through their own storytelling?
Yeah, so there's quite a few of them. There's young lads that I follow on Instagram. I'll have to double check his handle. It's Tom_Nippers. But again, he creates the most tongue-in-cheek, hilariously entertaining videos about his race weekend that he does. And again, he might have had an absolute disaster of a weekend, but the way that he puts himself across in these videos, it's light-hearted, it's enjoyable, it's entertaining, and it brings value to the person watching it because it makes them laugh, it makes them enjoy it, it makes them think, they don't watch it going, oh, well, he got a P12 out of his race. They're then subscribing because they want to actually know more, or they want to watch more of these videos, or they want to follow in him. So that's one example. A more high profile from over here in the UK would be Dan Lloyd from the British Touring Car Championship. Now, he's got a fantastic example of how to use your personal brands, because he has his own company working with other racing drivers on branding and helping them get sponsorship as well. So again, the more the merrier. But he does his own vlogs as well, and it's not that I'm saying vlogs are something that drivers have to do, but it's a very quick and easy way. Video content is huge right now on platforms. But he does it in such a way, it's literally recorded on his iPhone. You could not get more raw, you could not get more authentic. And he shares his honest opinions about and his honest experiences about how he goes through that race weekend. And again, he's another driver that is no stranger to making business relationships, and that's something he actually talks about on his one of his vlogs. He talks about the process of having one of his partners there with him at a race weekend, and because of a conversation they've had, his race partner actually upgrades their package at that weekend because of a conversation. So again, showing exactly the importance of being able to have that face-to-face conversation and keeping it all about those relationships. So yeah, for me, that's a brilliant example of having a personal brand and using it well to not only build your audience but to build your profile as well.
That makes sense. Have you seen this? I guess these trends continue into the some of the bigger categories. I know you mentioned some of the F1 teams. Is I know they have whole departments that do this, but is that have you seen the trend shifting more towards those personal, those human connections in like every series, or I'm assuming it started or was bigger with the grassroots, and then big companies see that and they take it and run with what they want. How I guess you don't have to go series by series, but how would you have you seen that grow in each series?
So yeah, that's another great question there, because that ties in really, really nicely with what I was learning about, during my time off from motorsport, about mindset and the power of thought essentially on what we do. So when you look at F1, NASCAR, IndyCar, any high level motorsport championship, as you said, a lot of them have their own marketing team. A lot of them have their own social media team and the likes. But what I've noticed is down towards the grassroots levels, like autocross or club racing or weekend rental karting, whatever, is drivers for the most part didn't feel like they had a story to tell. Drivers didn't feel entitled to look for an audience. They're like, oh well, I'm just doing this. Who's going to be interested in me? I had one gentleman that I was speaking to. Age is a massive thing as well. He's like, I'm a chubby middle-aged guy who's going to be interested in me, and it's getting across that point. Everyone has their story, and while we look at NASCAR and F1 and IndyCar and the young hotshots and all our favorites, even in things like F1, how many of us love the likes of Alonso because he's getting on a bit and he's the underdog. It's about making yourself into essentially a character and giving reasons. Actually, I've just realized this is literally the most important thing, and this is all that matters. Is all you're trying to do is give people a reason to care, give people a reason to give a damn about who you are. That's all you're trying to do, period.
It's all about that human connection. That's something that I learned very young growing up. My grandfather telling stories every camping trip, going to see his family. They're from South Dakota, several hours away, but we would go, we'd tell stories the whole way, meet with the family, they'd tell stories. We'd come back, tell those stories to other people, and just share the overall human experience. And I think that's a big, for me, it's a big push into what partnerships should be. Is there anything, I guess, in industry or with like this type of strategy that excites you or that you've seen? I know you mentioned, sorry, your touring car driver, but is there anything else that you've seen or would like to see in this kind of realm?
I think that a lot of teams and drivers are slowly starting to get the picture here. They're slowly starting to get the idea of posting valuable content and being unafraid to explore new ideas. Certainly on the likes of Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. But social media is only one part of it. I'd love to see more opportunities for drivers to just learn about that very fundamental skill and aspect of speaking to people full stop. It's something, and I can say this hand on heart with experience as a former racing driver. It's been quite a few years since I've been behind the wheel. I, it was something that I actively avoided. I didn't like to go up to speak to people. I didn't want to. I grew up in my early 20s with social anxiety, and the thought of speaking to people scared the absolute bejesus out of me. And the idea of going up and speaking to strangers, or even worse, strangers coming and speaking to me, would send me out in cold sweats. But it's something that you have to be okay with. It's something that you have to accept that people are going to want to support you. And the reason you need to be okay with that is that if you're expecting money, if you're expecting sponsorship or any sort of partnership whatsoever, you have to accept that people are going to want to follow who you are. We don't give money, we don't support people that we don't believe in, that we don't have our heart behind. And that's essentially what it all boils down to. So when it comes to any championships who are doing things well, I think a lot of them are doing well. For me, again, going back down to the branding and the partnership thing, and just a real genuine human moment. I would never normally choose F1, but I think we had the greatest moment in the past couple of years, the most human moment with all this nonsense and storylines and rivalries and all this sort of stuff. We look back to that Lego car lap where they took a couple of corners in those Lego cars. I guarantee you, you will not find a more human moment than that. Everybody forgot about the teams, the rivalries, the nonsense that goes on behind the scenes. They were all 8-year-old boys behind the wheel of that. They were laughing and giggling, and that for me was one of the most genuine moments. And to be able to watch that and share in that as well, you feel suddenly a whole wave of empathy. That's what drivers need to do. They need to find that moment of allowing their audience to connect.
No, that makes sense. And I've got people who, again, I'm just getting into this, but I've got people who know nothing about Formula One, nothing about racing other than, like I said, our local track. and they're coming up to me asking me what I thought about the Lego race. So it's something that is reaching more people than I think. Well, maybe they thought it would, but it's definitely reaching a lot more people than I think most people thought. And that's I appreciate it because that's what I'm trying to. Not that I have that many Legos or can do that, but that's what I'm trying to get people to understand is that there is a human element, there's human connection that we need to make in order to make partnerships, not just business partnerships, not just motorsports partnerships, but human partnerships. That's just it, you. If you don't have connection, it won't work. Period. So I just want to ask some questions, kind of about you. Uh,
Yeah.
is there a race? You said you work for your local track, but is there a race, a favorite race you've either attended or worked at or commentated? Whatever your role was.
Oh, I probably favorite race that I've commentated on in person would have to be the Caterhams at Knockhill because they were just unlike anything else that I've ever seen. Closely followed by any of the Scottish Championship motorbike racing. Now, I'm not a huge bike racing nerd. I don't watch a lot of it. I've tried to I'll try and get into like Moto3, Moto2 when it's on and watch some of the MotoGP. But any of that sort of stuff, any of the Scottish Championship bike racing just blew my mind because the speed and the intensity of the racing was just it's like nothing else I'd ever seen. But the Caterhams, I mean, we were used to seeing at Knockhill, 20 to 30 cars was maybe our maximum that we would see there. And Caterham's brought like 40 to 50 cars on track. I've never seen cars go three wide at the points in the track that they were got. It was just so bonkers, and seeing cars actually. So the way that Knockhill is, it's quite a big track in terms of undulation, so it goes up and down. It's only like just over a mile long, but it goes up and down quite significantly. And over that weekend, they ran it both in a clockwise direction and anti-clockwise direction. So halfway around the circuit, there's a chicane that's uphill, but on the other day, it means that chicane came after the hill. So these Caterhams were literally, there's quite a few photos of them, four wheels off the ground, flying over this chicane. Just crazy stuff. The craziest race I've taken, or the most memorable race I've taken part in, would have to be my very first one, the Citroen C1 2019 24 hours at Silverstone. 100 cars on the grid, my very first racing experience in real life. And I've never been more excited and frightened in my life. I have absolutely no problem in saying that was like I had moments where I was actually crying in the car through both excitement and through fear, sometimes at the same time. But having been a sim racer for many, many years since the early 2000s, and that was my first opportunity to race in a real car. Going out onto Silverstone, there's GoPro footage of me screaming with excitement because I'm like, this is just the same thing. It's exactly the same. Yeah, it was a hell of an experience. And spinning at the middle of Maggots and Beckett's in pitch dark and having about 40 headlights coming towards you, yeah, that's not an experience. Yeah, it's not fun.
I couldn't even imagine. I think the fastest I've gone. I mean, granted, it's a little different. We're not supposed to speed too much, but yeah, I might have got up to 120 on a freeway. You know, trying to.
That's faster than I did in the C1.
That's it's that's another long lost dream that maybe he'll get back to at some point. But yeah, so like I said, again, I'm coming in new. You have multitudes of experience over me. Is there a series that you would say is, I guess, more underrated than one of the other ones, more the more covered ones?
I still would say to anyone that hasn't seen it that um the American MX5 Cup Series is hands down the greatest racing championship that you will ever see, that you will ever follow, or that you could ever want to take part in. It is the racecraft is incredible. The racing is so thrilling. There's never a dull moment, and just having done a lot of MX5 racing in the sim, they're just wonderful to drive. They're just so competitive and just so straightforward, and they leave you feeling like a rock star. But just as a spectator, there is no greater sight than for me than that. I grew up watching F1, loved watching that, then got quite bored of it in the 2010s. Went towards the BTCC, the British Touring Car Championship, loved that rough and tumble, fast and aggressive type of racing. Went over to TCR for a little bit and then discovered endurance racing. I've got no idea why I was so late to the party with endurance racing, but oh my God, my heart belongs to GT3s, GT4s. Give me some LMDHs or LMPs in there as well. Daytona is probably like my bucket list. If I could go to Daytona 24, yeah, that would be amazing. Nürburgring, I know that circuit like the back of my hands. Still never actually been there in person. Spa as well. All of those endurance races, I'd love to go and see.
I'm a big fan as well. My son doesn't get it. It's too long to watch. I personally love it. Um, like it wasn't it was the last one or two ago, but WEC was at Imola, and
Mm.
I know that a lot of the, I guess I would say debate, but a lot of the issues people have with Imola is that it's F1 wise, it's a train. You know, it's just line astern. They just keep going. In sports cars, there's GTs, there's LMPs, there's hypercars, there's everybody passing GTs. There's
Mm.
constant action, and I love it. It's those are my favorite races. Um, I again, I want to at least touch a hypercar. That's my goal. In the next couple of years, I just want to touch one to say that I did.
I've seen one in person at Goodwood last year. I saw the BMW hypercar, and as cool as you think it is, it's not even halfway. You're not even halfway close to it. I got a couple of photos of inside, and it's like a SpaceX rocket. That's the only way I can describe it. It's beautiful LED lit buttons everywhere, displays, screens, buttons. Oh, it's if you imagine what you thought a race car was like when you were 8 years old, this would fill every single. Yeah, this would tick every box of it. And then you look at the outside, and it's like this is just absolutely beautiful.
That's true. Are they as like short? I guess the word because when you see them on TV, they're all the same height. But then you see some of the drivers or mechanics
They,
stand
they,
next to them.
yeah, they are quite different in real life. They're quite small in terms of like height wise, but very very long and very wide as well. I mean, if you've ever seen an LMP, they're like a jacked up version of that to the nth degree. But yeah, they are definitely something to try and see if you can see them. I never saw it going at in anger, which I would love to see. But yeah, I've been next to one while it's been parked.
That's true. And then going back on you said it a little bit. I actually found out we have and I don't know if she raced in. I'm assuming the North American one, but she did race MX5. So now that you mentioned that, I'm going to go try to have a chat with her. They actually own one of our indoor karting tracks. So, and we went around. I think just yesterday, I took my son, and in the back corner, big warehouse, but in the back corner, they added two of her championship carts that she used to race. And then all of a sudden, and maybe I wasn't paying attention, but yesterday we saw one of the Mazdas, and I was like, where's that from? So now I'm definitely going to have to go talk to her on that one. Is there any brand that you would love to see more active in motorsports?
Ooh, that is a difficult question. There's so many brands I think would be absolutely incredible, but in terms of brands that I would love to see doing more in motorsport, I've never ever been asked that question, so that is a first for me. I, do you know what? I can't off the top of my head. I'd love to see more crossover, I guess, between sim racing and computer-based brands and I guess maybe real life motorsport brands. We're seeing a lot of that crossover happen now, thanks to the likes of Jimmy Broadbent, RDA, James Baldwin, and the likes there. But yeah, I can't think off the top of my head. Because a lot of the brands that I'm aware of obviously are already involved in motorsport. So yeah, I think yeah. I can't really think of any off the top of my head, unfortunately.
Is there like I guess a category that you think should be in more? Because like I said, I know here, at least in the grassroots, it's a lot of tools, a lot of like Home Depot's big, Lowe's is big, a lot of our
Hmm.
stuff like that. Um, and I know you mentioned there's crossover with, or you want to see crossover with the esports. Is there any other one you could think of?
Well, that touches on a very, very important kind of talking point with drivers that are looking for sponsorship as well, because while we speak about sponsorship in terms of money, in terms of financial reward, you have to remember there's a huge opportunity for drivers to receive, service equivalents as well, or product equivalents as well. So, like you said, tools that they're naturally going to use, things that they're naturally going to be advocating for. But yeah, in terms of the brands that are already out there, there is a heavy lean towards tools and automotive based services. But I'd love to see more of what we're seeing in the likes of F1 Academy. So you're getting more lifestyle brands coming in. A lot of the girls are sponsored by the likes of beauty brands, makeup brands, perfume, fragrances, things like that. Things that may normally in our whole monkey brain way of thinking be more associated with females, but that's not necessarily the case. We could just as easy argue that for men's products as well. So I think that's maybe an avenue that could be further explored into, like beauty products. But again, that comes heavily, Larry, into personal brand. Are you somebody that is known for taking care of your appearance? Do you care about how you look? Are you into fashion? Look at like Charles Leclerc and his personal sponsorships that are worth millions of pounds in terms of luxury watches, fashion, high fashion as well. Who you are as a person heavily dictates the kind of brands that you can bring on board. So if you can nail who you are as an identity as a person, have a think about what brands you already know and that you're a big fan of, that you already support. So for me, another example, and this isn't motorsport related, but this is just an example of me being a passionate advocate of a brand. We've got a Scottish computer manufacturer called Utopia Computers. Now, I've never bought anything for them, but I've seen all of the products that they do. I love the systems. I love like watching their pictures of the builds that they do, and their ethos as well, their customer service, the way that they're always, talking about how proud they are of serving their customers. I'm a huge, huge fan of that, and I'll share everything that I can do for them. So in a way, I'm bringing value to them because I'm supporting them. I'm being their cheerleader. I'm, sharing their message. That's something drivers should be doing, regardless if they're approaching for sponsorship. Be a cheerleader, be passionate, be loud about the things that you believe in.
I love it. I love it. Is is there? And we've already been touching on it a lot. This is interesting to me. I love it. Is there any driver or team or series or anything that you would want to see make a connection that they haven't yet?
Ooh, this is one of me getting thrown a driver under the bus. Um, I think there's a lot of potential connections. It's almost like Tinder for racing drivers. There's a lot of missed opportunities and potential opportunities for the younger drivers. I would say, lean into your the things that you believe in, the things that you're passionate about, the values that you've got. But I guess the drivers that I would like to see making more of themselves is drivers of either gender uh, over 30, I think, making more into building a profile for themselves. There seems to be a big thing with age in the motorsport industry that once we get to a certain age, we're past it. It's fine. We're just doing it for the enjoyment, for the fun. And that's fine. If you can support your own career financially, you're not interested in playing the game, cool. You do you, go have fun. We'll see you out there on the racetrack. But if you would like to make yourself or potentially have a semi-professional career, or try and get some brands on board, or whatever, your age is possibly one of your greatest assets, because your age is what is going to identify you to your audience, to your supporters, is going to tell your story. Going back to the guy that had emailed me, it always reminds me of the NASCAR truck driver. For the life of me, can't remember his name. 72 years old, but still actively competing in the Camping World Truck Series. And I'm like, what more? What permission do you need? You've got somebody out there that's at a very high level of motorsport, still regularly competing. They've worked their backsides off for the past umpteen years. There's no excuses.
It's a bigger world, or a bigger world than I thought before I got into it. And I think, like you've said, there's so many connections. There's so much human element to share with each other. I, I just hope it continues. It's been great. And before we go too long, I could talk to you for days, my friend. This has been enlightening, but I do thank you for coming on with me. I do appreciate all your insights. But before we go real quick, how can people learn more about you and more about Camber and what you do?
So they can check me out on Instagram at We Are Camber. They can head over to the website, Camber, wearecamber.co.uk. They can email me, David at wearecamber.co.uk. And you can bribe me with Haribo as well. I am incredibly receptive to that. Yeah, it's my pleasure, Larry, and I agree. I think that we're going to be having lots of conversations in the near future. If I could leave your audience with three key takeaways on how to build better relationships. I'm going to swear in the second one. It's quite mild, so I'm hopeful that you get away with it. But one is, don't look down on anyone. You don't know who anyone is. You don't know the people that they know. You don't know the connections that they have. The other one, the second one, is don't be a dick. It seems to be a very straightforward thing, but yet here we are. Again, just be nice. Just be a nice person. And three, the small talk is the big talk. As much as you go promoting yourself about you're a future world champion, that you're the best thing since sliced bread, that's not what's going to get you sponsorships. Is bonding with someone over your love of a football game, or your favorite type of food, or whatever. That is going to be the thing that you're going to bond with people of. So yeah, three strong tips that have never kept me wrong, and I think have got a lot of value.
Well, I know I'm going to use them. I appreciate everything you've taught me. This has been enlightening, to say the least. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for listening. Subscribe, share. Let us know what you think. Thanks.